I thought I'd found the perfect family, until they excluded me from Thanksgiving saying, just family. 2 years paying for everything, and I wasn't family enough. So I took a solo trip. That's when I met her, my fiancé's father's ex-lover. What she revealed about their secret meetings destroyed everything. Now they're blowing on my phone begging for money, but it's too late. My name is Dayton Kress. I'm 40 years old, and I've built a comfortable living as a bankruptcy consultant. The legitimate side involves helping people navigate Chapter 7 filings. The less legitimate side, well, let's just say some clients prefer their assets invisible when courts come knocking. It's not something I'm proud of, but it paid for the kind of life that attracted someone like Celeste Rivers. I met Celeste at a charity auction 3 years ago. She was bidding on artwork for her office, something about creating a welcoming environment for clients. I was there because my accountant insisted I needed more legitimate charitable deductions. She outbid me on a landscape painting, and when I congratulated her afterward, she smiled and said I could visit her office any time to see it. That was Celeste, always knowing exactly what to say to make you feel like you mattered. She had this way of tilting her head when she listened, like your words were the most important thing in the world. For a guy who'd spent years helping people disappear money, having someone actually see me felt revolutionary. The early months were perfect. Celeste worked as a marketing director for a mid-sized firm downtown, and she had this quiet confidence that drew people in. She never asked too many questions about my work, which I appreciated. Most women got uncomfortable when they realized what I did for a living. But Celeste just nodded and changed the subject to something lighter. It wasn't until we'd been dating for about 8 months that I started understanding why she was so accepting of my questionable career choices. That's when I met her family. The first family dinner was at their modest ranch house on the outskirts of Phoenix. Miranda had cooked enough food for 10 people, despite the fact that her cancer treatments made eating difficult. Clyde kept excusing himself to take business calls that lasted longer than any legitimate business call should. Corbin spent most of the evening staring at his laptop, frantically applying for jobs. But what struck me most was how Celeste moved through it all. She helped her mother serve dinner, slipped her father some cash when she thought I wasn't looking, and quietly updated Corbin's resume while he talked about his latest rejection letter. She was the glue holding everything together. That night, driving back to my condo, Celeste finally opened up. "I know they're a lot," she said, staring out the passenger window. "They're family," I replied. "Family's supposed to be a lot." She turned to look at me then, and I saw something shift in her expression, like she'd been waiting her whole life for someone to say exactly that. The thing about helping people hide money is that you learn to spot financial desperation from a mile away. It has a smell to it, that particular mix of fear and false confidence that comes from trying to keep up appearances when everything's falling apart. I recognized it the moment I walked into the Rivers house, but I chose to ignore it because I was falling for Celeste. Over the next few months, the family dinners became a regular thing. Every Sunday, I'd drive out to their place with groceries or take out from somewhere nice. Miranda would protest that I was spending too much, but she'd tear up a little when I brought her favorite soup from this Italian place downtown. Clyde would disappear for his mysterious phone calls, but he'd always come back looking more stressed than when he left. It was Corbin who finally clued me into what was really going on. We were in the backyard one evening, while Celeste helped her mother with dishes. The kid was nursing a beer and staring at his phone with the kind of intensity usually reserved for lottery numbers. "You ever gamble, Dayton?" he asked suddenly. I set down my drink. "Not really." "What?" Corbin laughed, but there wasn't any humor in it. "My dad thinks he's got a system. Been thinking that for about 15 years now." The pieces started falling into place. The phone calls, the stress, the way Clyde's hand shook sometimes when he thought nobody was looking. I'd seen it before in clients who'd burned through their retirement funds, chasing wins that never came. "How bad is it?" I asked. "Bad enough that Mom's selling her jewelry to pay for her treatments," Corbin said quietly. "Bad enough that Celeste has been covering the mortgage for the past 8 months. That hit me like a punch to the gut. No wonder she'd been working late so often, taking on extra clients. She wasn't building her career. She was keeping her family's head above water. "Does she know you told me?" I asked. "She'd kill me if she knew," Corbin admitted. "But someone needs to know how much she's carrying. She won't ask for help, and Dad's too proud to admit he's the reason we're drowning." That night, I lay awake thinking about everything Corbin had said. I understood now why Celeste had been so accepting of my questionable business practices. When your father is bleeding the family dry at poker tables, a guy who helps rich people avoid taxes probably seems like a saint. The next morning, I call my accountant. I need you to set up a charitable foundation, I told him. What kind of charity? Medical expenses for families dealing with cancer. It wasn't entirely altruistic. The foundation would provide excellent tax benefits while giving me a legitimate way to help Miranda with her treatments. But more than that, it felt like a chance to use my skills for something good for once. Within 2 weeks, the Miranda Rivers Medical Fund was operational. I seeded it with $50,000 and made sure the paperwork looked completely legitimate. When I presented the grant to the family, Miranda cried. Clyde shook my hand with genuine gratitude. Celeste kissed me like I'd just saved her life. Maybe I had. The medical foundation was just the beginning. Once I saw how much relief it brought Miranda, I couldn't stop myself from finding other ways to help. It became a game for me. How many problems could I solve without making it obvious that I was the one writing the checks? When Corbin mentioned that his student loans were keeping him awake at night, I had my lawyer contact him about a new graduate debt relief program that my foundation was piloting. $25,000, no strings attached. The kid cried when he got the letter. When Clyde's truck broke down and he couldn't afford repairs, I happened to know a mechanic who was looking for cash work. I paid him directly and told Clyde the guy owed me a favor from way back. Clyde spent an hour thanking me and promising to pay me back someday. Don't worry about it, I told him. Family takes care of family. The look on his face when I said that, pure gratitude mixed with shame, told me everything I needed to know about how long it had been since someone had shown up for him without expecting something in return. But it was the evening I found Clyde in his garage, staring at a stack of betting slips, that I realized helping with money wasn't going to be enough. Rough night? I asked, settling into the lawn chair next to his workbench. Clyde startled, then quickly shuffled the papers into a drawer. Just going through some old paperwork. I didn't call him on the lie. Instead, I grabbed 2 beers from the mini fridge and handed him one. You know, I said, I had a client once who told me something interesting. Said the hardest part about getting clean wasn't stopping the gambling. It was learning to feel like a man again without the rush. Clyde took a long pull from his beer. This client of yours, he figured out how to do that. Took him a while, I admitted. But he said the turning point was when he stopped trying to win back what he'd lost and started focusing on what he still had. We sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Finally, Clyde spoke. I haven't placed a bet in 6 months, he said quietly. But I still check the odds every day. Still calculate what I could have won if I played my old numbers. That's progress, I said. 6 months ago, you would have played them. Celeste doesn't know how close we came to losing the house, he continued. If you hadn't helped with Miranda's treatments, I don't know what I would have done. You would have figured something out, I said. That's what fathers do. But even as I said it, I wondered if that was true. Some men rise to the occasion when their families need them. Others fold under pressure. I was beginning to suspect that Clyde belonged to the second category, which meant Celeste and I were going to be carrying this family for a long time. 2 years of Sunday dinners, crisis management, and watching Celeste pour herself into keeping everyone else afloat had taught me something important. I wasn't just in love with her anymore. I was committed to her entire world, and that world needed someone strong enough to help carry the load. The engagement ring cost more than most people make in 6 months, but I didn't care. After years of helping clients hide assets from their ex-wives, I knew the value of finding someone worth fighting for. Celeste was worth everything. I proposed on a Saturday evening in November, in the same restaurant where we'd had our first real date. Nothing fancy or public, just the 2 of us, good wine, and a question that had been building in my chest for months. Marry me, I said, sliding the ring across the table. Celeste stared at it for a long moment, then looked up at me with tears in her eyes. Are you sure? She asked. You know what you're getting into. My family isn't going anywhere. I'm counting on it, I replied. She said yes, and I kissed her right there in front of everyone. When we got back to her apartment that night, she called her parents immediately. I could hear Miranda crying happy tears through the phone, and Clyde's voice getting thick when he asked to speak to me. You take care of my girl, he said when Celeste handed me the phone. She takes care of everyone else, I replied. I figure it's time someone took care of her. You're a good man, Dayton. Better than we deserve. That phrase stuck with me. Better than we deserve. It wasn't exactly a ringing endorsement, but I understood what he meant. The Rivers family had gotten used to disappointment. They weren't accustomed to someone showing up and staying. The wedding planning became another family project. Miranda insisted on helping despite her ongoing treatments. Clyde surprised everyone by offering to pay for the flowers. Apparently, he'd been saving up from his disability checks. Corbin volunteered to handle the music, which mainly involved creating playlists on Spotify, but made him feel important. It was during one of these planning sessions that I realized something that should have worried me more than it did. Nobody ever asked what I wanted. The conversation was always about what would work best for the family, what would be easiest for Miranda, what would be most affordable for everyone involved. I told myself it didn't matter. Marriage wasn't about what I wanted. It was about what we were building together. And what we were building was a life where nobody had to carry everything alone anymore. But in quiet moments, usually late at night, when Celeste was already asleep, I found myself wondering if I was getting married to a woman or to an entire family's worth of problems. The answer, I realized, was probably both. The phone call came 3 days before Thanksgiving. I was reviewing client files when Celeste called from work, her voice carrying that careful tone she used when delivering bad news. "Hey babe," she said. "So about Thursday." I set down my pen. "What about Thursday?" "My mom called. She's feeling really weak from the chemo, and Dad thinks it might be better if we keep things small this year. Just immediate family." The words hit me like a physical blow. Just immediate family. After 2 years of Sunday dinners, after paying for Miranda's treatments, after covering Clyde's debts, after becoming the financial backbone that kept their world from collapsing, I wasn't immediate family. "I see," I said, keeping my voice level. "It's not personal, Dayton. You know how Mom gets when she's not feeling well. She doesn't want anyone seeing her when she's..." "When she's what?" "Sick. I've seen her sick plenty of times." "That's different. This is family time." Family time. I'd been writing checks for their family time for months, but apparently my presence wasn't required to enjoy it. "Of course," I said. "You should be with your family." There was a pause. I could hear Celeste's office in the background. Phones ringing, people talking. Normal life, continuing, while mine shifted beneath my feet. "You're upset," she said. "I'm disappointed. There's a difference. Maybe we can do something Friday, just the two of us." "Sure. Have a good Thanksgiving, Celeste." I hung up before she could say anything else. For the next 10 minutes, I sat in my office staring at the wall, trying to process what had just happened. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I booked a spontaneous trip. Lake Tahoe in November wasn't exactly peak season, but that was fine by me. I needed space to think, and I needed to remember who I was before I became the Rivers family's personal ATM. The drive gave me time to replay every conversation, every family dinner, every crisis I'd helped solve. Had there been signs? Moments when they'd made it clear I was useful, but not truly welcome? Looking back, I realized there had been plenty. The way conversations stopped when I entered rooms. The way certain topics were clearly off limits. The way they accepted my help with gratitude, but never quite with the ease of someone who truly belonged. By the time I reached Tahoe, I'd made a decision. If I wasn't family enough for their holidays, then I wasn't family enough for their problems either. Tahoe in November was exactly what I needed: cold, quiet, and empty of people who wanted anything from me except payment for services rendered. I spent 3 days hiking, thinking, and gradually coming to terms with some uncomfortable truths about my relationship. On Friday morning, I was having coffee at a small diner near the lake when a woman approached my table. She was probably in her late 40s, well-dressed, with the kind of confident posture that came from years of getting what she wanted. "Excuse me," she said. "Aren't you Dayton Kress?" I looked up, not recognizing her. "Do we know each other?" "Not exactly. I'm Violet Thorne. I used to know Clyde Rivers." The name meant nothing to me, but something about the way she said, "used to know," made me gesture to the empty chair across from me. "How do you know Clyde?" I asked. Violet sat down and ordered coffee when the waitress came by. Then she studied my face with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. "Clyde and I had a relationship about 5 years ago," she said finally, "before his gambling got completely out of control. I'm guessing he never mentioned me." "No, he didn't." "That's not surprising. Clyde's very good at keeping secrets when it suits him. Tell me, how much money have you given his family?" The question was so direct it caught me off guard. "I'm sorry, you're Celeste's fiancée, right?" The bankruptcy consultant who's been funding Miranda's treatments and bailing Clyde out of his gambling debts. Word gets around in circles like ours. Circles like ours. I didn't like the implications of that phrase. What do you want? I asked. Violet smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. I want to tell you about the conversation Clyde and I had 2 weeks ago. The one where he told me about his daughter's generous fiancée, who was so eager to be part of the family that he'd pay for anything. My coffee suddenly tasted bitter. Go on. He asked me if I thought they should include you in their Thanksgiving plans. I told him that grateful people don't usually exclude their benefactors from family celebrations. Unless, of course, they're planning something that their benefactor wouldn't approve of. Such as spending the holiday with Clyde's bookie, discussing exactly how much money you'd be good for before you figured out you were being played. The words hit me like a physical blow. I'd suspected I was being used, but I hadn't imagined it was this calculated. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because Clyde still owes me $15,000 from when we were together, and I'm tired of waiting for him to pay up. If you're smart, you'll cut your losses before you end up like me. Another creditor he's too ashamed to face. She stood up, dropped a 20 on the table, and walked away, leaving me alone with my coffee and the sinking realization that I'd been the biggest fool in Nevada. I drove back to Phoenix in complete silence, my mind racing through every interaction I'd had with the Rivers family over the past 2 years. Violet's words echoed in my head. Another creditor he's too ashamed to face. That's all I was to them, a walking ATM with emotional attachments they had to manage carefully. By the time I reached my condo Sunday evening, I'd made several decisions. The first was that I wouldn't be attending any more family dinners. The second was that the Miranda Rivers Medical Fund was being dissolved immediately. The third was that Celeste and I needed to have a very different kind of conversation than the ones we'd been having. She was waiting for me when I got home, sitting on my couch with a bottle of wine and what looked like a prepared speech. "How was your trip?" she asked, standing to kiss me. I stepped back. "Educational." Her smile faltered. "What does that mean?" "It means I met someone who knew your father." Violet Thorne. Ring any bells? The color drained from Celeste's face so quickly I thought she might faint. She sat back down heavily, her hands shaking as she reached for her wine glass. "Where did you meet her?" she asked quietly. "Lake Tahoe." She recognized me. Funny thing about Violet, she seems to know a lot about our relationship. She knows about the money I've been giving your family. She knows about your father's gambling debts. She even knows about the conversations your family has been having about me. Dayton, I can explain. Can you? Can you explain why your family discussed whether to include their benefactor in Thanksgiving dinner? Can you explain why your father's been talking to his ex-girlfriend about how much money I'm good for? Celeste set down her wine glass and looked at me with tears in her eyes. It's not what you think. What I think is that I've been played by experts. What I think is that your family saw me coming from a mile away. Successful guy. No family of his own. Desperate to belong somewhere. Perfect mark. That's not true. Isn't it? Tell me, Celeste, when you met me at that charity auction, did you already know what I did for a living? Did you already know I had money? The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. Our mutual friend, I continued, the one who introduced us. Let me guess, someone who knew about my business, someone who might have mentioned to you that I was successful and single. It wasn't like that, she whispered. What was it like? It was practical. Yes, I knew you had money. Yes, I knew my family needed help. But I never meant for it to go this far. I never meant to fall in love with you. Fall in love. Past tense. The truth was finally coming out. But you did fall in love, right? Just not enough to defend me when your family decided I wasn't worth including in their holiday. They're scared, Dayton. They're scared of losing you. But they're also scared of needing you too much. They don't know how to handle someone like you. Someone like me. Someone who fixes everything. Someone who makes all their problems disappear with a check. They feel guilty about it. Not guilty enough to stop taking the money. Celeste stood up and walked to the window, her back to me. What do you want me to say? That we used you? Fine. We used you. But it wasn't supposed to happen like this. I wasn't supposed to actually care about you. The honesty was brutal, but at least it was honest. Well, I said, at least now I know where I stand. The next morning, I started making phone calls. The first was to my lawyer, instructing him to dissolve the Miranda Rivers Medical Fund and transfer any remaining assets to a legitimate cancer research organization. The second was to my accountant, telling him to stop all payments to anyone connected to the Rivers family. The third was to Corbin. Dayton, he answered, sounding surprised. Everything okay? That depends. Did you know about Thanksgiving? A long pause. Yeah, man. I knew. Did you know about the family meetings? The discussions about their Dayton situation? Another pause, longer this time. Some of it. Why didn't you tell me? Because I was hoping they'd come to their senses, Corbin said quietly. Because I was hoping Dad would stop being such a coward and Mom would stop being so proud, and Celeste would stop trying to manage everyone's feelings. And when that didn't happen, I figured you'd figure it out eventually. I just didn't think it would happen like this. I appreciated his honesty, even if it came too late to matter. For what it's worth, Corbin continued, I think they're idiots. You're the best thing that ever happened to this family, and they just threw it away because they were too scared to let you actually be part of it. Thanks, kid. That means something. What are you going to do now? I'm going to stop being their safety net. The next call came from Clyde, about an hour after I'd hung up with Corbin. Dayton, we need to talk, he said, his voice tight with anxiety. Do we? I know you talked to Violet. I know what she told you. Then you know I'm done. It's not what you think. Clyde, stop. Just stop. I know exactly what I think, and I know exactly what this is. You found a sucker, and you milked him for everything you could get. The only mistake you made was excluding him from the celebration. That wasn't my idea. I don't care whose idea it was. I care that it happened. Please, Dayton, Miranda's treatments are not my responsibility anymore. You want to gamble away your family's security? Fine, but don't expect me to keep buying it back for you. You can't just abandon us. Watch me. I hung up and immediately blocked his number. Then I did the same with Miranda's number and with Celeste's parents' landline. If they wanted to reach me, they'd have to go through Celeste, and I was curious to see how long it would take before she realized that her family's problems were about to become her problems again. The answer, it turned out, was about 6 hours. That's when my phone started ringing with a number I didn't recognize. Dayton, please don't hang up. Celeste's voice came through as soon as I answered. I'm listening. They're panicking. Dad's been calling everyone he knows, trying to figure out how to pay for Mom's next treatment. Mom's crying because she thinks this is all her fault. Corbin's talking about dropping out of school to get a job. Sounds like a family problem. You can't just cut us off like this. Actually, I can. I'm not their husband. I'm not their father. And I'm apparently not their family. So their problems aren't my problems anymore. What about us? What about our engagement? What about it, Celeste? Are you going to marry me? Or are you going to marry someone who can fund your family's lifestyle? The silence stretched long enough that I had my answer. 2 weeks after I cut off all financial support, Miranda Rivers was admitted to the hospital. The call came from Corbin, not Celeste, which told me everything about how desperate things had become. Dayton, he said, his voice shaking. Mom collapsed at home. They're saying she needs immediate treatment, but insurance won't cover it without pre-authorization, and we don't have the cash to pay up front. I sat in my office, looking out the Phoenix skyline, and felt nothing. No guilt, no panic, no desperate need to fix their crisis. It was liberating. I'm sorry to hear that, I said. That's it. You're sorry. What do you want me to say, Corbin? I'm not part of your family. Remember? Your father made that very clear. This is different. This is life or death. It was always life or death. The difference is that now you're dealing with it yourselves. She could die, Dayton. People die, kid. Sometimes it's because they can't afford treatment. Sometimes it's because their husbands gambled away the money that could have saved them. But it's not always someone else's responsibility to fix it. The silence on the other end stretched long enough that I thought he'd hung up. What kind of man are you? He finally asked. The kind who learned to stop being taken advantage of. That evening, Celeste showed up at my condo. She looked terrible, exhausted, desperate, and older than her 35 years. Let me in, she said when I opened the door. No, please. We need to talk. We've talked. You used me. I figured it out, and now it's over. There's nothing else to discuss. My mother is dying. Your mother has cancer. She was dying when I was paying her bills too. How can you be so cold? How can you be so manipulative? Even now, even after everything that's happened, you're trying to guilt me into writing another check. Celeste's composure finally shattered. She started crying, not the controlled tears she'd used in previous conversations, but raw, ugly sobs that came from someplace real. I never meant for it to happen like this, she said between gasps. I never meant to hurt you. But you didn't mean to use me. Yes, Okay. Yes, I used you. But I also loved you. Past tense again. Present tense. I love you now. And I know you love me too, or you wouldn't be this angry. She was right about that. The anger came from caring too much about people who'd never care enough about me. It doesn't matter, I said. Love isn't enough when it's built on lies. Then what do you want? What will make this right? Nothing. There's nothing you can do to make this right. You had 2 years to treat me like family, and you chose not to. Now you get to live with that choice. I closed the door and listened to her cry on the other side for 10 minutes before she finally left. 3 days later, I heard through mutual acquaintances that Miranda had passed away. The funeral was small, poorly attended, and completely funded by a GoFundMe page that raised about a third of what they needed. I didn't attend, and I didn't contribute. 6 months later, I was reviewing applications for a new charitable foundation when my secretary buzzed me. Mr. Kress, there's a Violet Thorne here to see you. She says you'll want to hear what she has to say. I had Violet shown in, curious about what had brought her back into my orbit. Hello, Dayton, she said, settling into the chair across from my desk. I thought you'd want to know that Clyde finally paid me back. Good for him. He paid me with the money from Miranda's life insurance policy. Apparently, keeping up with his gambling debts was more important than keeping his daughter's engagement ring. That got my attention. Celeste sold her ring. Had to. Medical bills from Miranda's final week ate up everything they had left. The house went into foreclosure last month. Celeste moved in with a friend, and Corbin dropped out of school to work full-time. I absorbed this information without the satisfaction I thought I'd feel. Instead, I felt empty. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because I thought you should know that they finally learned the lesson you were trying to teach them. Too late to save Miranda. Too late to save their family. But they learned it. What lesson is that? That consequences are real, even for people who think they're too important to face them. After Violet left, I sat in my office for a long time, thinking about the Rivers family and what had become of them. I didn't regret cutting them off. They'd earned every bit of the hardship they were facing. But I didn't feel vindicated either. The truth was, we'd all lost something in this mess. They'd lost their safety net and their mother. I'd lost my illusions about family and belonging. Nobody had one. These days, I'm more careful about the people I let into my life. I still help people. The new foundation supports cancer patients who can't afford treatment, but I do it through proper channels now, with accountability and oversight. No more personal checks, no more emotional attachments, no more confusing charity with family. I never heard from Celeste again after that night at my door. Sometimes I wonder what happened to her, whether she found someone else to help carry her burdens, or whether she finally learned to carry them herself. But mostly, I don't think about the Rivers family at all. I learned something important from that whole experience. You can't buy your way into someone's heart, and you can't love someone into loving you back. Family isn't about who needs you most. It's about who chooses you even when they don't need anything. The Rivers family needed me, but they never chose me. Once I understood that distinction, everything else became clear. Now I'm building something different, a life based on mutual respect instead of mutual dependency. It's lonelier sometimes, but it's honest. And after years of living a lie, honesty feels like the most important thing in the world.